I believe I can fly. Grand, okay. Grand Rising, everybody. Oh, that's what I haven't heard. I heard come from the stage, but I didn't hear from you guys, you know. I love this whole Grand Rising theme. I remember when I was a little girl or a young person, I had very young nieces and nephews. Um, I would wake them up in the morning and it was a rise and shine. And then I would, tickle them so they could get out of bed. And, when I think of that term, Grand Rising, it just, bubbles up inside of me because, Ernest Holmes says that we live our life from within out, and our life, our full expression of life is a spiral upward, It's not out there, it's upward, upward into the ethers whose circumference is nowhere, right? And it's just so wonderful and so beautiful. As it's already been expressed, today we are looking at our monthly theme. We moved from holy boldness last month, which is stepping into that real brave essence of who we truly are, and we're stepping into practice makes imperfect. I was like, well, Reverend Chris called me, and I said, okay, I'll do it. I'm in the midst of teaching class right now, but I'll step into that because I'm heading out of town. And then he sent me the theme. He said, I'll send you the theme. And he sent me the theme, and I quickly looked at it, and I said, oh, okay, good. I'm good. I'm a pretty perfect person. I can speak about perfection, right? And then I went back to read it, and it said, practice makes imperfect. Me? Imperfect? No way. You can speak to my husband about that. No way. So I soon caught the glimpse of the idea that I grew up in this whole era of life where everything that got pounded into my brain, school-wise, family-wise, everything was practice makes perfect. Practice makes perfect. It was like a chant, practice makes perfect. Okay, so let's see a show of hands. Who lived by that motto? Oh, yeah, right? We would get up in the morning and, practice makes perfect. Practice, practice, practice. But the reality of it was, as I thought about it, I came to understand that there was a lot going on in the idea that I needed to get up in the morning and I needed to get the perfect job, go to the perfect school, have, the perfect clothes, and I'll talk about that later. And just everything had to be perfect outside of me. And the reality was, I got to a point where I was really, really tired. I was really tired, and I couldn't do it anymore. It was exhausting, trying to get up every day and live this motto. It really was. So when I saw the theme for this week, I said, what if perfection isn't the goal? I was like, okay, I can go with this. I really can, because, the understanding of the idea that, I can really own how sick I got with growing up in that whole perfect world all around me. And one of the things that Brene Brown in The Gift of Imperfection, she wrote this really great book, by the way. I'm just pulling a plug out there. And the subtitle of this book is Let Go of Who You Think You're Supposed to Be and Embrace Who You Are. Who you are. When I read that quote, what I thought about was another thing that my mom used to tell me. She used to say, tell me who your friends are and I'll tell you who you are. Yeah. Man, I lived by that. I really did, But I have to tell you that some of my friends were questionable. So, I started to really evolve into that. And my mom was one of these people that everything was about perfection. And I'll normally towards the end of our talk, we share a little bit of our experience. I'm going to start with my experience. My experience comes from, I grew up in a very, very abusive alcoholic home. It was very intense. So needless to say that my mother really, her life was to live a life of perfection. Because one of the things that happens when you live in a household of alcoholism is that you won't want any of your neighbors to know that this is happening inside of your house. So everything that you do revolves upon the idea that if you step out of your house, everybody else has to see the perfection that goes on inside of your house, which of course is a lie, right? So I grew up in this environment where, and my culture, by the way, in my culture, and I'll step aside from that, in my culture, if you had to run to the store to get eggs or milk or something, you first have to take a shower, put on your makeup, find the right dress in the closet, get all dressed up to run down the street to get the eggs to fry them for your kids, So it was just like, and that's starting to show why this, okay? Because, you grow up with this idea that you have to always, you get up in the morning and everything has to roll into that perfection. So what do? I go up into my life unfolds, and, it becomes this mindset that has been set in my mind that everything has to be perfect, that what I do has to be perfect. But, the reality of it is, and, the idea of perfection kept me really in a place of where I was just blocking any relationship that I had with my higher power. Anything that connected me to a consciousness of reality, of living a divine essence of a great life in my life, was being blocked by those, perfection. That idea that everything in my life had to roll into that perfection. I was talking to Valerie, I think it was this week, about, do you guys remember the plastic on your furniture in the living room? Oh my God, yes, that came to mind very easily, where you had the plastic, right? Because you want, your parents or your mom wanted the furniture to be clean and everything for when the company came. But guess what? The company came and the plastic stayed on. So I never understood that whole idea of keeping everything perfect around the house. It was just unbelievable. So embracing who we are, stepping into that reality of who we truly are, because we are the divine essence, the full expression. We are the creators, the co-creators of the highest and the most incredible, perfect essence in the universe. We are. And when we step into that, we can really, really live our lives with the idea that everything that is imperfect in our lives is a true gift of beauty. A gift of beauty that we can start to live our lives through, because this is one of the quotes that came from this month's readings, and it was, through the lens of oneness, we understand that all of existence is divine. It is divine. So therefore, we are divine. We are truly divine. So in this divinity, we take our imperfections and we make them divine by embracing them and seeing the gifts and the beauty in them. There's another quote from our theme this month. Is wholeness reminds us that oneness must consist of all the pieces. Of all the pieces. It's not just the perfect and the nice, pretty pieces. It's all of those other pieces that we can bring together in our lives. My husband shared this with me this week as he was asking me what was the talk about this week, and he shares, this theme is from Vince Lombardi. Who remembers Vince Lombardi? Yeah, he was one of our greatest coaches, back in the late 60s, And he used to tell his team, his players, perfection is impossible. Just strive to do your best. And he was looked at as a very transformative coach, because the idea, of course, he wanted his teams to be perfect, his players to be perfect, but he was taking them through something else. He was exposing them to something else, that all they needed to do was to strive a little bit at a time to reach that place of perfection. He had another quote, too, that said, perfection is unattainable. But to chase perfection is excellence. And I had to really think about that. Because you used the word chase with perfection, and that's what I was doing all my life, chasing perfection, And as I thought about it, I realized that in the chase of perfection, I get to stand and realize that it's a step at a time. And one of the things that Ernest Holmes teaches us to is that there's no destination. There is no destination. There's only a direction, right? And a journey that we go through in life. And that's what we get to realize in that journey, that we live through the very essence of all those things that make up the pieces of our lives, the splendor of them. I used to look at my life as, oh my God, you've lived such a god-awful life. The house you came from, the household you came from, the parents you had. And by the way, my mother was not the alcoholic, my father was. They've both passed on. But I used to take all that stuff on and look at it as, oh man, what a victim. What a victim of all this imperfection. Well, guess what? Here's what happened. I became a member of the Al-Anon Fellowship. And in the Al-Anon Fellowship, one of the things that they have, or they say, which is very true, that every single thing is spiritual. They say this over and over in this program, that everything in our lives is spiritual. And so when I joined that program, I was like, are you kidding me? I had this other life. That wasn't so great and so spiritual, Well, they have these steps, and you work these steps. And then there comes this one step. It's called the fourth step. And in the fourth step, it says you make a searching and fearless moral inventory of yourself. And guess what? A lot of people don't like and they run from that step because it's scary. It's scary. We have to look at our imperfections. They call it shortcomings and they call it character defects, but it's really looking at our imperfections, at the way we lived our lives. And through that step, one of the greatest gifts that I got was that as I looked at these imperfections, one by one, and by the way, in the fifth step, you have to share those imperfections with somebody else. So, you no longer hide in the closet somewhere and go like, okay, here I am, Lord. Take me, use me, right? So as I go through these steps, through this step, and through these unfolding of these imperfections, one of the gifts that I got was that I used all those things as survival mechanisms. And the other thing was that I used those things in my life to get me to where I am today. That they really weren't god-awful. That they were the beauty and the gifts of who I am. That they make up all of me. That it's not just me over here being this pretty, cute little self. That it's me over here being this imperfect being, too. And if I bring them together, I can balance those out and live a life full of the divine essence of God, of spirit, of blessings, of opportunity, of possibilities. Because that too, when I live in the possibility of the grandeur of what could be, that is so incredibly awesome. Because I get to live a life of knowing and understanding that every word, every action, every thought that I put forth in my life is a full expression of God, is the allness of God through me expressing. At this very moment, God is expressing through me. Because I sometimes forget, because I have this memory and forgettery, So it is the glory and the understanding. And that is where God's grace lives, by the way. When we get to that place and time, when we see those gifts in our lives, and we see how God's grace has unfolded in our lives. There is that poem of Footprints, right? Where all along, who was holding us up and who was carrying us, right? It is that spiritual essence in our life that has done for us. So this is a quote from Ernest Holmes. The Spirit has already ordained that nature shall be perfect. It's already done. Ernest says this. Perfect God, perfect man, woman, perfect being. It's already done. It would be impossible for Spirit to ordain anything else since in order to be at all. It must be perfect in its nature. God is will and representation. The will of God is always at work, and it's always representing itself. A perfect cause must produce a perfect effect. The normal functions of life are harmonious, but we interfere with those in our ignorance and thus bring discord into temporary being. We are the ones. And as co-creators, we are the ones. We are the ones that could change our lives. We are the ones that could change our thinking in our lives. The beauty of that idea, the understanding of that idea is so amazing to me. I won't mention the person. They know who they are. They're in this room. They came to me last week and they said, Idalia, thank you for who you are and the gifts that you've given me. And I am so touched by that. I am touched by that. Because that has to do with the idea of the journey of all my imperfections coming to fruition where somebody else can see that and take it for themselves. It shows me that more is going to be revealed. That my higher power, that the essence of my being and your being has more in store all the time. Whether it's through perfection or whether it's through imperfection. It is always revealing so many things, it's just unbelievable sometimes. So, I don't know if anybody's familiar with this. Kintsugi. I had to practice that word. I had to keep practicing because it was very imperfect at the beginning with my little Latin New York accent that I have. So kintsugi, So if you're familiar with this, this is the idea of taking imperfection and turning it to beauty, right? So kintsugi is proof that some things are even more beautiful for having been broken or imperfect. You are the beauty of my life. You are. When I think about this idea of taking my imperfections and seeing something beautiful, this particular object, and they gave a little history of it, and what they said is joined with gold is the Japanese art of repairing broken objects with gold lacquer to piece charged together again, creating a more object through the acts of breaking and repairing. Breaking and repairing. Sometimes we have to take it apart. We have to take it apart like I did in my fourth step, little by little, look at it, not to live in that place, but to grow from it, to build from it, to know without a shadow of a doubt that my higher power is always at work, always using me and you in every moment of the day, to put together the beauty of who we are, because we are beautiful. And beauty has nothing to do with the outside. Beauty is an inside job. Like Michael Beckwith said, it's an inside job. So living outside of ourselves, looking at how we could be perfect out there, right, allows us to be in this moment, this glorious moment, the beauty that we are. So did anybody catch this? My slides had the title on the bottom. I wanted to make them imperfect. So as we come together today, we know that it is all good because it's all God. And if we step into that goodness, we grow and grow and grow. So our spiritual principles, we're studying spiritual principles in our class, and we're having a woohoo great time, right, guys? So I chose 2 spiritual principles. One of them is oneness. The one infinite reality is undivided, complete, whole within itself, because we are whole and complete within ourselves, every single thing. And freedom. Freedom is the birthright of every individual. We are free to choose and create our experience of life. We are free every moment of the day. We fly free. And in that flying and in that freedom is the joy and the happiness of every single experience that we have in our lives. So I'll end with this affirmation. It's the affirmation from our Centers for Spiritual Living. I just decided to keep it because it was the one for today. I embrace the beauty of my divine imperfection. Let's repeat that together. I embrace the beauty of my divine imperfection. Feel that. All right. Let's just take that into prayer. As we feel that energy that lives here in this sacred space. It lives here because we bring it here. It lives in our soul and in our hearts and in our minds and in our bodies. So it is in this knowing that we know there is one power, one universal knowing, that essence that is always alive, that power that lives inside of each and every one of us, that rises up in the beauty that we are, that we unify with it. It is in our individualization of our imperfections and the beauty of who we are through our perfectionism that we rise up in this knowing and in this connection of community. So in this power and in this essence, we name and claim it today as who we are. For we are the oneness of God. We are the entity of God. We live in that conviction, in that warmth, and in that compassion of every single thing that God is. And all we need to do is to know it, to believe it in every fiber, cell, and tissue of our being. So today, as we acknowledge this in our lives, we know this without a shadow of a doubt. Without a shadow of a doubt. that we are one, that everything that we are is that complete and universal essence of God itself. For God is love, the love that reminds us that we live inside a world that lives in peace, connection, beauty, expression, dignity, self-acceptance, forgiveness. And we just say yes to it all. Yes to it all. For I know these words have been spoken through me. And I just let them go. Let them float into that nothingness. For they are done. They are done. And together we just anchor this prayer with the words, and so it is. Amen. Thank you.